must stop the terror. Now watch this drive.
How do you like my garbage truck? This truck is in honor of Kamala and Joe Biden.
Wakanda forever.
Minnesota!
Please clap.
I know the human being and fish can coexist peacefully.
Rick, I'll tell you what. 10,000 bucks? $10,000 bet?
I'm not in the betting business,
but okay.
Spencer Cox is a former telecom executive who always seems like he's auditioning for the title of America's guiltiest white guy.
I'm a Republican. I'm a Democrat. Go Jazz.
Rip City, go Blazers.
Disagreeing better, not disagreeing less, is the answer.
We are live. Welcome. I'm excited for this episode. We've got a special guest, our first guest on the Pattern Recognition podcast. We've got Paul Miller. Paul ran for Congress in Utah's 1st Congressional District in 2024. He ran against incumbent Blake Moore. And, as we head into 2026, this is a big midterm election year. I figured this would be a great opportunity to hear from somebody who didn't have a lot of political experience, but still decided that he wanted to make his voice heard and make the issues that mattered to him heard, and give Utahns a second option when it comes to the Utah Republican primary. So without further ado, Paul, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thank you so much. Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, of course. Let's just hop right into it. Who is Paul Miller?
So, Paul, professionally, I'm an electrician. I'm a blue collar worker. I'm a foreman for my company, and I'm married. I've been married for 15 years now, and we have twin boys, and they're about to turn 10 here in a couple weeks. And I've been a Utah resident my whole life. And growing up, my wife really wanted me to talk about what I did when I was younger. So when I was younger, I kind of knew everybody in the neighborhood. I always helped out whenever somebody was putting a sprinkling system in, or, we had some retired ladies that needed their driveways shoveled. We always made sure that their driveways were done. I loved helping people, and that's just a little bit about me. So which is kind of why I got started into politics, is I wanted to help out in whatever way I could. So,
well, I mean, that leads into pretty much my second question. So what made you start to become politically active? Like, was your family political at all? Was there something that prompted you to want to become more interested in politics? Like, what really kind of inspired that?
Yeah, growing up, I knew my parents voted, but they weren't huge into politics. They didn't really follow politics really. They were kind of uninformed voters, I would say. I lived with one of my best friends. His name was Tim, and he was really big into Glenn Beck during the Obama years, and that's what really kick-started me into politics and learning about all of the corruption and everything involved in national politics. And then, I don't know if there was something that prompted me to become more interested. I just knew about all of the corruption going on, and the circular money schemes that go on between politics, and so obviously I learned more about that running, and how disastrous that is to our current system. I don't know if you want me to expound on that.
I mean, we got plenty of time. That kind of leads into the next question. Why did you decide to run in 2024? What happened in 2023, 2024? What made you want to run against Blake Moore in 2024?
Yeah, I think it was actually 2022. The fall of 2022 is when I really started to think about it, and it was Mitt Romney actually that prompted me getting interested in it, because I was listening to Sean Hannity on the way home from work one day, and whenever Mitt Romney's in the news, it's never good. The guy was a disaster. I loathe Mitt Romney, and so, but Sean Hannity, like, was saying there's got to be somebody in Utah better than him. There's got to be, and so, like, and so I was just thinking, I'm like, even if it was like the common man, just somebody, some regular, average, everyday Joe, is going to be better than somebody that's part of the establishment, and that's just going to keep continuing these horrible cycles in politics in DC. And so that's what I really got kind of started and looking into running as a candidate. And then I started my Twitter and tried to get everything started for a Senate campaign, even though I was a nobody. And then as I was going, Trent Staggs also kind of announced when I was starting my Twitter campaign. And after a few months, Trent Staggs was just getting a lot of headway. He obviously had donors that were helping him. He had a good campaign team helping him. And so, and we stood for pretty much the same principles. And so I knew,
He's kind of fitting that like MAGA America First lane within that Senate race.
And so a lot of people on Twitter had reached out and said, hey, listen, we need to get behind Staggs because he's a really strong MAGA candidate, and you need to run against somebody in the House. It's not as strenuous as a campaign, so a nobody is more likely to maybe get an upset out of them. You just got to put in a lot of work. And so
upsets in the House are much more common than upsets in the Senate.
Yeah. And so I was like, okay, and so anyway, so I started looking at our congressman at the time, and I wasn't a huge fan of any of them. Burgess Owens is probably my favorite out of the four at the time, when Chris Stewart was in. And so anyway, so Blake Moore is the district that I was in, and so I decided to go after Blake. And I know he was in like the climate caucus with John Curtis, and I'm one of those people that thinks climate change is a hoax. Yes, man-made effects on the climate might happen, but it's so minuscule that the natural environment does far greater damage to our climate, or to change the climate than we would. So like our effect, like we're dumping trillions in it for nothing. And so anyway, so I was really against that, and his votes on the debt were really concerning to me, which was like my main focus and driver when I was running against him, was the debt. And so, but yeah, as far as that goes, I think that sums it up as far as what specific event concerned me or convinced me to run.
You were actually, I didn't even know that. I didn't know that you were considering running for the Senate. So when Staggs hopped into the race, and you decided to throw your support behind him, I'm not aware of anybody else that was even running for the first district. So I think there might have been actually, let me pull that up. I think at the convention.
So there was Derek Draper. Derek Draper was the other candidate. Also a really good guy. I got to meet him and his family. His wife and daughters were very kind to me. Even Blake Moore and Blake Moore's staff, very, very kind people, very respectful people. So like it sucks because when I see this corruption, what I see as corruption, right, in my opinion, and Blake Moore and his staff is always respectful. They've always been nice. It's never been like an enemy type thing, and so you kind of feel bad sometimes when you like attack somebody, but
yeah, well, so you filed, and do you remember when you filed? Was it like January of 24?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was like I think it was January 3rd through the 8th, I think, of 2024 that you had to file, and I filed in the middle of that period.
Okay, so you decide to run in 2024. January 2024 is when you file your candidacy. You decide to run for Utah's first district. What were your biggest concerns about running? Again, you're not just running for an open seat. You're running against an incumbent.
Yeah.
What were you thinking?
Like my biggest concerns were, especially right now after the Charlie Kirk thing, we see it especially more now. The violence against the right, and my family was my biggest concern. Like, because I don't believe in the transgenderism stuff. I don't believe in like all of the stuff that the left is like religious about. And so. Like my family was my biggest concern. My second biggest concern was money during the campaign, because I know a national campaign, you need a lot of money to get anywhere, especially during against an incumbent.
I mean, Utah's not really considered a very expensive state to run elections in, and even a congressional seat in Utah can cost upwards of $1 million.
Yeah.
Like if you're going to run a successful competitive campaign.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And Blake Moore already had 1.5 million in his campaign, and that's what sucks is like the
and you get support from the national party if you're the incumbent.
Yes, exactly. Especially if you're part of the establishment.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what people don't get is how everything in politics is tied to money. And your political campaign, you can have the right ideas and you can be like the right person, but without money you can't do anything. I'll probably try and hit on this a little bit later, but yeah, and so that was one of my concerns. And then while I was running, I had this thought, and this is a question for you, which was a big concern, was if I were to get elected, and I'm not the establishment, I wouldn't be going in, to be part of the establishment, but say there's a spending bill, right? And you're about taking out all of the waste, fraud, and abuse, cutting down to a bare minimum of what we need to spend on. But if you don't vote with the establishment, then they take away programs at Hill Air Force Base. So Hill Air Force Base will get less funding if you vote no on spending bills. So do you vote with the corruption and that furthers your district and Hill Air Force Base, or do you vote against it and try and be courageous and do what's right and trying to get rid of the waste, fraud, and abuse? What would you do in that?
I mean, that's why I haven't run for Congress. I think that's a lot of people have a hard time. People recognize that and people also recognize, so not just the economic impact that Hill Air Force Base or other Air Force bases have, and you can talk about the military industrial complex and how like there's a lot of bad that comes from that. Yeah. There's also objectively a lot of good that comes from that. We make a lot of technological advancements when we fund aerospace engineering and stuff like that. And I don't think any American, especially you look at what's going on around the world right now, I don't think any American would reasonably say that we shouldn't be spending money on defending our borders, defending our national sovereignty. Like we do need an Air Force, we do need a Navy, we do need an Army. So in many ways, like how do you thread the needle with funding what's needed and what's necessary, and then what's fraud and abuse, right?
Yeah. And I wish I would have remembered who it was that was talking about it in one of the House hearings. I don't know if it was Matt Gaetz, but it was somebody, and they had this bag of O-rings, right? And they're like, if you buy this bag of O-rings at Home Depot, this thing costs like $100. But yet, when we buy it, we're spending 90 grand on these O-rings. Why? Why is it so much for the U.S. military, but not, is it like the rubber in these things can't be that special?
Yeah.
And so like there really is, so much, but I'm never against spending for the military or R&D for the military. I'm very pro military and military funding. It's just there's so much waste, fraud, and abuse in there that we need to cut that out and make sure it's efficient and productive spending.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, that was my biggest fear. If you decide to go against the establishment, will it punish my district? And you would hope that courage is contagious, by voting against stuff like that. But um, you know, and then you have like the media against you because the media is for the establishment, and
Yeah.
and so
As much as they, I mean, even like the Salt Lake Tribune, like as much as they like
Yeah.
to pretend like they, don't like Republicans, they will run cover for Republicans a lot of time if it's the establishment Republicans. If you pay any attention at all, like they'll defend Spencer Cox if they need to. They'll defend Blake Moore if they need to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, and a personal story to that. So I uncovered, and this is all perfectly verifiable. Like Blake Moore can't hit me for defamation on this. And so, because I really get concerned about that kind of stuff. And so, so if you go to the FEC's website, fec.gov, and look up who is contributing to Blake Moore's campaign, there was a time when I was driving home, and a lot of the thoughts that I get is while I'm driving home from work, evidently. But I had this idea to compare when bills in the House were getting voted on and when campaign contributions were coming in. And so I developed a link in between this company, LS3. Like all of their engineers were dumping the max donations in every time that he voted for a military spending bill. And this, so these guys are contributing 50 grand worth of donations every time he votes for a military spending bill. And so since he was on the Armed Services Committee, and since this has happened, I've looked up the main lady that works for LS3, and they do this to, there's like two Republican representatives that they do this to, and I think that they kind of pay off or bribe these two representatives to ensure that they get these contracts through the government for engineering for the military, and in doing so, they kick back campaign contributions, because some of the people from LS3 that were donating were just average everyday Joes. Like when I look up where they live, in Roy, like their house is as big as mine or smaller than mine, right? And so and to me, I'm like, how can you afford, and this is, the husband and the wife donating the max, which is like 3 grand. So you're donating 6 grand every single year to Blake Moore, and not getting reimbursed through your company, because if your company reimburses you, that's illegal. And
Like
so
if you make an endorsement or if you make a contribution and then your company says like, thank you for making that contribution, we'll give that money back to
yeah,
you.
so that violates the FEC laws. And so anyway, so I took all of that information, and I sent it to every single news organization in Cache County, Davis County, Weber County, the Salt Lake Tribune. I was like, surely the Salt Lake Tribune's gonna like paint Blake Moore in a negative light for me. No, nothing, not a peep. And it was the Robert Gerke, I think, is the guy that I emailed from the Tribune. And but yeah, like, and then there was the other thing that I had uncovered about Blake, and it was his wife's father's company, the Boyer Company, that their revenue had skyrocketed. So
And they're a major construction company in Utah.
yeah,
right?
they're a business developer. So they develop businesses and buildings and stuff like that. And so um, I had been looking up their portfolio, and they have a section where they have buildings that they built, you know. And so when you see them building, a building for the Department of Interior, the IRS, and they own and manage all of Hill Air Force Base housing, like they're doing buildings for the government. So it's like, oh well, they already are doing a little bit of government work, So I wonder how much their revenue increases with Blake being in there and having Blake, wedge them in. And so I paid $100 from through InkFact for the Boyer Company's revenue and what they were making every year. And 2020 they had, so they were making about 77, 80 grand a year from 2014 to 2019. And then 2020 they got up to 160 or so million a year, and then it goes back down to like 112 during 2021. So that's Blake's first year in Congress. And then I can send this graph to you too. But and then in 2022, after he's been on the Armed Services Committee and the Ways and Means Committee, it shot up to $336 million from 112. So that's 300%. And then in 2023, it shot up threefold again to $936 million. So almost $1 billion. And so it's like, how can that ever be natural or organic in a company without outside forces kicking in? And so, but I went to the news and everybody with that, and nobody will touch it.
Yeah,
And
I mean, which is unfortunately not very surprising. If you're, I'm sure everyone that listens, we've been talking about this for forever. The Utah media, they run cover for the entire establishment, left or right. They don't care. They just want to keep the money rolling. And when you talk about those, that's big numbers that you're talking about.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money at stake. So when you're going up against a real like money machine like that, like I'd understand some concerns and some
frustration of corruption.
Yeah.
And I've really, and that's the thing, I pay for the reports myself. So, but I'll probably buy another report here this year or the beginning of next year. I guess, the beginning of next year. 2026 is the next election cycle. Just to see what they've been doing on 2024 and maybe 2025.
Yeah.
To see if the revenue went up or it stayed close to what it was, because that's it's just a huge jump.
So on that same topic of big money in politics, if you're unaware, there's two. I mean, Paul, you are obviously aware, but for any listeners that are unaware, there's two ways to get onto the GOP primary ballot in Utah. You can either gather signatures of registered voters in the state.
Republican.
Yes.
Registered Republicans.
Registered Republican voters in the district that you want. You need like 7,000 signatures, I believe it is. And then then you have to submit them by a certain like deadline. You have to submit 7,000. They have to be verified, and you have to, if you need to come back and get more, or you can qualify at the GOP convention.
Yeah. The
signature gathering route is very popular for a lot of the incumbents because you can just pay some firms like $50,000 or $100,000, whatever it might be. There's some lawsuits that are going on right now regarding Spencer Cox and his campaign, going this route, and some of the questions that they had on his signatures. But you decided, well, let me just ask you, did you take the signature gathering route or did you take the GOP convention route, and why?
So I took the convention route. Initially, I, not knowing, like having like the 100% conviction of it, or whatever. I knew that I wouldn't have the time or the money to go with signatures, and I didn't really agree with it. And after seeing like the process of what candidates go through of the convention route, like I am a diehard convention only. Signature gathering is, we should never have had it. It should never have been allowed. The convention route, these delegates put in a lot of time of their own personal time into getting to know the candidates. And candidates put it in a lot of time too, but like they really get to ask the candidate whatever question they want. And so so they're highly informed voters, and then they go to convention and they get a vote on that, right? And so delegates get to see what the opposing candidate doesn't like about the incumbent or their other opponents, and they can question the incumbent or their opponent about that to see what uh how they respond to it, because body language and how you answer things really account for a lot. And
Well,
but
how do you do with, how do you cope with pressure when you're getting pressed by delegates who don't maybe necessarily 100% agree with your, you know, positions or your voting record or things? Because again, delegates are they're very well educated. They know,
yeah,
maybe better than the average primary voter. They know what's going on. They are very. That's what some people don't like about the convention system, is they think that it's just a bunch of whack jobs who
yeah,
are just, they're too far into conspiracies, or they're too far into loving Trump or whatever. I mean, if you actually go talk to them, they just are the most informed. A lot of them are the most informed, Utah Republicans in the state. They know what's going on in
yeah,
DC. They know what's going on in Salt Lake City. They know the voting records of all of these candidates. If they're incumbents, they know that they've gone on their websites. They've done their research. And so I think that's part of the reason why a lot of people have issues with it, is because they're like these delegates, they're educated. They
they're
know
smart,
they know my
yeah,
record. Yeah, and they're holding my feet to the fire. I don't like that I have to be accountable to that.
yeah, yeah. And it's actually surprising to see how many moderates are delegates in the Republican system. Um, like I was pressured to run as the Weber County GOP chairman for Weber County, and I was really surprised to see how many moderates were in there and how many people didn't like Trump, and how many people liked the signature gathering process. And I was like, to me that baffled me, because I think signature gathering is the devil at this point. And
It's pay to play. Really,
yeah.
it really is pay to play.
Oh, definitely. And and they don't see it that way. Like, all they want is for somebody uh that relates to them more. And so, but to me, I'm like, well, then why do you vote in the Republican Party? Because, like, that's not what the Republican Party stands for. But if you get enough of your friends, to go to your caucus, like, that's how these people get in. And I think that's what happened with in 2024. When it was the Trump primary, people wanted to get their voices heard, and so they had a lot of Nikki Haley or anti-Trumpers go in. And so I think we saw a lot more anti-MAGA people than usual that election cycle. So
Yeah. Uh, so you decide to go for the convention route. You declined the signature gathering route. When you announced your campaign and when you started, doing the campaign process, did any political organizations reach out to you, like before the convention, after the convention? Did any, like, PACs? Did any, you know, NRA, like, questionnaires? Like, I know a lot of candidates, like, they'll get questionnaires from, like,
yeah.
pro-life groups or Second Amendment groups, or, tax right groups, or any of that. Did any of them reach out?
So before the convention, it was mainly delegates. I would say there was probably 5 to 10 delegates that sent me a survey. Like, and that's the thing. There's 20 to 35, 40 questions on these surveys, and I would spend upwards of 4 hours on some of those longer surveys. So I'm spending 2 to 4 hours on each of those surveys, and I was happy to do it. Like, and it's funny because, like, one of the questions that I'll probably never forget, um Becky, what's Becky's last name? But anyway, so Becky and her husband, they they're both delegates, and they're from North Ogden. And she actually helped me, or tried to help as much as she could on my campaign. Oh, Laws, Becky Laws. And um so one of the questions that she wrote was, do you have an American flag posted in front of your house?
That's
And
a good question.
I, but you can't lie on these things. So it's like, no, I don't, and you kind of like bow your head in shame. And, I still don't, but, like, it's not that I'm like ashamed of the flag or I'm afraid of the flag or anything like that. It's just, um, yeah, I don't know. I'd almost felt bad because I was a candidate running for a national office and I didn't even have an American flag in the front of my house. But anyways, the surprising thing was that there was actually, uh, and I'm not gonna name who this person is. I don't know. I guess I could. So, um, crap. Now I forgot his name. He was Bill Campbell. So Bill Campbell had actually reached out to me, and he's like, "Hey, I'm one of the opponents. I'm the Democrat candidate for the first district."
That's right. He was the ultimate Democrat.
Yeah, and he was
Nominee.
an unopposed Democrat,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that was his play. Like I don't know when he turned in his candidate registration or application, but I wonder if he went as a Democrat because nobody else was. But
I mean, in that district, you might as well not run if you're a Democrat. You're going to get
you're gonna get
slaughtered.
handed to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but and I can't say enough good things about Bill Campbell. He just getting to know him, like he's just such a great guy. Just that his heart's in the right place. Like you know a good guy when you see him,
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, we talked on the phone a couple times, and he was like, "Hey, listen, these are the people that you need to get a hold of, to reach as many delegates as possible." And so I'm like, "Oh, okay." And he's like, "Yeah, I think you have the best shot as far as convention goes in beating Blake." And he gave me all of these numbers to like Davis County conservatives, Cache County conservatives, Weber County conservatives. And so I reached out to them and we got some meet the candidate events going, and so that was before convention.
Mm-hmm.
And then at convention I had there was a guy that approached me, and he said that he had a super PAC that was funded by dark money.
Okay.
And so I'm like, "Oh, okay." And he goes, "Don't worry, it's all legal." And so I'm like, "Okay, good." And so he's like, "Yeah, but we're looking to upset some of these, these incumbents, and so we need to get behind somebody, and so here's my number, and try and let's set up a dinner or something sometime." And so I tried to set up a dinner, but it just never worked out for us. And so, but once you go into the primary, yeah, there's like the NRA, the Gun Owners of America, and you got Ballotpedia reaching out to you. There's well over 10 or 20 organizations reaching out to you to fill out their thing. And it's funny because even the Democrat ones reach out to you. It's what is it, Mothers? I don't know, but anyways,
like more left-leaning organizations, they want to know what you think about all these things.
Yeah, like I swear there was one that like David Hogg goes to. Like,
oh geez,
yeah,
gun grabber one.
Yeah, there's these gun grabber ones, and I'm like, I start looking up the organizations, and I'm like, why are you interested in a Republican candidate? Like,
yeah,
and so I'm like, I'm not gonna waste 4 hours of my time on this one. So
yeah, maybe they just do that by default. Yeah, who knows? That's funny though. That's funny that they did reach out to you. So okay, so at the convention, you got. Let me actually pull these results out. So it was 3 rounds between you, Blake, and Derek Draper.
Yeah, 2 rounds. Yeah,
2 rounds. Sorry, yeah, because 3 candidates, 2 rounds. First round, it was you and Blake that advanced, but nobody got 50%, so it advanced to the next round.
Yeah.
And at the second round, you actually defeated him. You got 54.8%, and Blake got 45.1%. So it wouldn't have ultimately mattered because I think the rules are you have to get above 60% to win it outright. But even if you had gotten 60%, he gathered signatures,
Yep.
so he qualified for the ballot no matter what.
Yeah.
But Paul Miller, unknown, never ran for anything before,
Yeah.
weren't in the state legislature or anything like that. I don't think you spent that much money at all. Looks like you spent, less than $6,000, and that's probably before the convention. So, what were your thoughts when you beat the incumbent U.S. representative at the convention? What was that like?
So at convention, and my wife was asking me some of these questions you're asking me earlier, and when she asked this question, she was surprised that I said, yeah, I kind of expected to beat him at convention. And so she was like, what? I was like, that was like the most shocking thing of my life. And I'm like, but the delegates don't really like Blake Moore. Like that's why the convention is so great. Like it's people that represent Republican ideals and are voting in or like on par with Republicans. And so when Andrew Badger ran against him 2 years, like in 2022, Andrew Badger was 6 votes away from 60%. And so so I had already kind of figured that like the delegates, weren't really on board with Blake Moore anyways. And so I knew that once they heard me and what I was about, that they would know that I am 100% behind the Republican Party platform for Utah, and I'm 100% there to represent those ideals, right? And so I kind of did expect, to win convention. I didn't know by how much, and if I did win by that 60%, like I did know that I needed to be a voice against, the signature gathering process and how it was wrong that, Blake Moore would be on the ballot. Because I tell you what, Phil Lyman and Trent Staggs got screwed. Like there never should have been a primary.
You're talking about Phil Lyman for governor against Cox and Trent Staggs against John Curtis.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Yeah. And in both of those instances, Cox and Curtis paid, hundreds of thousands of dollars from these organizations to gather signatures for them.
Yeah.
Which, I mean,
and what did John Curtis get in convention? 9%?
Oh man, I can't remember.
He was really low. But that's what I'm saying. Like these people aren't for Republican ideals. Like that's why the convention system's the best.
Well, the delegates see straight through it.
The
delegates know that John Curtis was a Democrat and then decided to switch parties so he can run for Congress. In 2017. Like they know that. Your average Republican primary voter, which I mean, I love Republican voters, but your average, stay at home, not really paying too much attention to what's going on until the ballot arrives at their house. They might not have the time or the knowledge to know or to look at, voting record or, was this person a Democrat before, or what have they said about XYZ? Like, the delegates, they have that history. They know that. That's why they're a delegate. That's why they care. They go to the caucus.
They pay attention to politics.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is one of the lessons that I really learned, through this process was, the convention's great because you're dealing with high informed voters, right? The primary is a complete opposite game, completely opposite. And that's where the money comes in, because almost everybody that's voting in this primary election is an uninformed voter. And so you need that money to get that postcard on their countertop, to get that, radio ad or whatever, like in their ears or in front of their face on the TV. And so because people are so uninformed, like you're going off of these little sound bites. But it also sucks because unlike the delegates, where the delegates can pressure them on these claims that politicians are making and say, well, you say that, but you did this.
You say you want to get rid of corruption, but you're trading stocks. You say that, but why? You're right, a Republican.
One thing John Curtis ran an ad that said that he would never let Joe Biden take away our public lands. And it's like 6 months ago, Joe Biden just took away a huge swath of land in southern Utah and northern Arizona. And what did you do for that? Nothing. You didn't post anything on your social media at that point. You didn't I didn't hear you do anything in the news about it. And it's like, I thought you said that you weren't going to let that happen, but yet you let it happen 6 months ago. Why is it different now? And so anyways, so yeah, so that's why money is the epicenter, because these uninformed voters don't know. And so like they know how, and they have internal polling, right? When you have money, to push these text messages out for surveys and internal polling. And so you know how to get a buttery smooth message on how to get the most voters on every issue. And so
you can run mailers, you can run TV ads, YouTube ads, you can do text messages, get out the vote, all that stuff. That's expensive.
Yeah, it's very expensive. And someone told me, as soon as that ballot hits their countertop, you need to have a mailer on their countertop too, so that way they know to look into you.
Yep. When they open their mailbox and they see a mailer from Paul Miller, and they see their ballot, if there's no mailer from Blake Moore, or if there's no mailer from whoever, the odds that they're going to vote for you because they see your mailer and they see their ballot in their hand, like that's just human psychology.
Yeah. And and another point is this universal mail-in ballot thing. Like when we make voting so easy and so convenient, like, don't get me wrong, I love it. I love that it's convenient and easy. But at the same time, when you're doing that, you're allowing all of these uninformed voters a voice. People that are gambling on their vote. They don't know that it's the right person to vote for or not. And that was the thing, like of the whole time that I ran my campaign, I only had, I think it was like 7,000 hits on my website. And so, and out of a, when there's hundreds of thousands of people voting, right? There's 100 to 110,000 Republican voters in the primary. And so anyway, so like I thought I would get a lot more, but that's just how crucial it is to reach out to those uninformed voters and get them on your side, because I had all of the receipts of Blake's corruption and how he's not voting how we should with our budget. But yeah, so it's rough. It's definitely a hard game to play.
So you win the convention, you qualify for the ballot. So as a result, you're invited to a debate with Blake. What was that like? Walk me through the prep. Walk me through what the debate was like. Were you stressed? Were you?
Oh, I was definitely stressed. Yeah. That was the most stressful point in the campaign.
The debate
was the debate. Yeah. So the prep, I watched all of debates from every candidate in every congressional district in Utah, whether it was the 1st, 4th, 3rd district, whatever. And for probably the last 2 to 4 years of every debate that they had. And I wrote down all of their questions. I tried to prepare, the best answer and answer it within the time frame that they give you, and that's the hard part, is fitting it all in a short 30 window. Seconds that they give you to answer it. And so we did that, and then and that was the thing. All of my help was all of the the grassroots, all of these volunteers that were willing to help me. And so there's a gentleman named Chad, and he lived close by, and so I had him and my oldest sister. She did debate in high school and stuff, and she does AP government in high school. She's a teacher down in Vegas, and so she was up in Salt Lake at that point, and so she came and helped me. And so we, my sister and Chad and myself, we're out here getting our questions and asking them and trying to form the most logical answer. And then we kind of did a mock debate, me and Chad pretended to be Blake, and he had looked up some answers using AI. AI, says Blake would answer it this way and stuff, which was kind of interesting. He was all about that AI.
It's like early days of it, right? I can't remember.
A
Well, I
little
can't remember
bit.
when those
Yeah,
LLMs came
yeah.
out, but yeah,
Chat GPT was out.
yeah.
And so that's what we had going into it. um and the debate itself, yeah, very, like, yeah, I was nervous. If you watch the debate, I had way too many ums and ahs, and uh yeah, and now here I say an but but yeah, I had way too many ums and ahs, and I wish I would have pressed on the issue of the Boyer companies. Sorry, the Boyer company's revenue. Sorry, I got a frog in my throat. And but I didn't say anything about it. I had just said that that he was in there for his own financial benefit. Because his wife is a partner at the Boyer company, and she receives a salary of over $1 million a year from the Boyer company. And so, like, when and the Boyer company owns and manages all of Hill Air Force Base housing. So when you're on the Armed Services Committee campaigning for more housing on base, that directly benefits you and your family, like his wife and him.
Yeah.
And so if the Boyer company's doing well, guess what? His wife receives some of that profit. So Blake Moore also receives financial benefit from that. And so that's so I wish I would have brought that up during the debate, but I didn't. So,
Well, maybe somebody, maybe if you run again, or maybe somebody else that runs against him might bring that up again. But
yeah.
dang, so I mean, yeah, that's like, that reminds me of Trent Staggs. I'm not going to be able to totally get the quote on it either, but he brought up in the Senate debate something along similar lines with John Curtis trading, and John Curtis's reaction. He was white hot angry.
Yeah, with Abbott, I think it was. What is it? Abbott Pharmaceuticals, but it was something with like the vaccine or something like that.
Yeah, maybe, I can't remember, but like, just the fact that he brought it up, like just the fact that he like even mentioned it, like John Curtis was extremely upset and like kind of took.
Well, it's because John Curtis had already had his closing arguments.
Yeah,
so
exactly. He's like,
so
what?
he
I
couldn't
can't
address it.
Yeah.
So Trent Staggs brought it up after his closing arguments.
Yep.
But yeah, and yeah. Anyways, where was defamation brought for that? No. So John Curtis didn't push for a defamation case. So if you're not pushing for defamation, like, is it true?
Yeah, you're worried if you do.
So because you get discovery.
Yeah.
You get the benefit of discovery. So like he can discover all of his stock trades, and then you have to go to the ethics committee for what they were talking about in Congress at that point, in in what committees, and so like that's where it gets hard, is what were they talking about in the committees at that point.
So debate comes and goes. The primary election was in June. What were you expecting in the primary? How were you expecting to do? What did you realistically hope for? What did you think was going to happen?
The primary was really hard, just because of the uninformed voter thing. I had quite a few volunteers that really wanted to help me out, and I really struggled in using them to my advantage. That was one thing that I wish I would have done better. But the primary, like, man, I worked my butt off so dang hard, and without money, you just really can't do anything. And so, like, we were trying to do everything that we could without money, and we sent texts out to many different oh dang. We sent texts out to many different locations for meet and greets, for anything, and surprisingly, a lot of the people that showed up were delegates that had already voted for me at convention, and they just really like.
Once again, the delegates are the most politically active.
Yeah,
there you go.
Yeah, exactly. And and a funny thing was, my event in Tremont I met this old lady, and she had actually worked at my grandpa's jewelry store back in the 70s, and
Oh,
so
geez.
she knew my grandpa.
That's cool.
So my grandpa's been dead for a long time, but so it was just really crazy that she even knew of my grandpa's jewelry store in Tree Mountain. So
Did you win her vote?
I hope so.
Hopefully. So yeah, obviously tough running from primary without a lot of money, especially when you're going up against, a guy who's got a lot of money and who's getting support from his the NRCC.
Yeah.
If you pay your dues into the
Yeah.
NRCC, you get some money back if you've got a challenger. So let me just pull up. What was the date of it? It was June
25th.
June 25th. Yeah. So you obviously, unfortunately, did not win, but you got 29,000 votes, 29% of the vote to Blake's 71%. So yeah, just take me through election night. What was that? What was that like?
So I had a really abnormal election night, very unconventional. Usually candidates get together with a bunch of their supporters and they have a party and stuff like that. My I was actually on vacation during the primary. My family had scheduled this vacation for the last 2 years, and so like they didn't plan it to be like this, but so I was in Ocean City, New Jersey at this point, and
About as far away from the first district as you can get.
yeah, exactly. And so, but yeah, that Monday we went to Washington D.C., stayed in Washington D.C., and then we did a tour with Burgess Owens's office because I thought it was going to be weird to do it with Blake's office, and so, but Blake's office actually, his what do they call it? Staff director, chief of staff. There you go. She reached out to me and she was like, "Hey, we heard that you're in town. If you want to do a tour with us or whatever." Very respectful, very classy of Blake and his staff, and so. But I told him I was doing one with Burgess, and so that was really fun, and so we were back in Ocean City at that night, and I knew that there was nothing going to happen until 8. So 8 p.m. when polls close is when the first numbers are going to hit, and so which is 10 o'clock Eastern time, and so the first numbers come out, and I saw 70-30. I waited a half an hour more, and things weren't going any better. And like 70 or 75% of the vote had been counted at that point. And so I was like, yeah, there's no way I'm winning this. So I called Blake and did my concessions to him, and he was really nice, and we joked a little bit on the phone, and so, but I was with my family, and even with the screaming kids and all, and so a little bit different, but yeah, that was my primary election night.
Okay, so not many theatrics, just spending
No.
time with your family, quick tour of DC, and then a quick call with Blake. Nothing
Yeah.
too dramatic.
Yeah.
It's nice. So what was the biggest lesson then, overall? Convention, fundraising, primary night, post primary. What was the biggest lesson that you learned running for Congress?
That our country's screwed.
Don't say that.
No, we really are. Because of how much money is the epicenter of everything. That's why it's not about the right person. It's not about the right ideas. It's about money. And so I knew this was going to be like a $4,000 lesson for me, which is really cheap for a national campaign, and I kind of knew that it was going to be a $4,000 lesson, a quick education, and because this is going to be a long answer, but to do the breakdown, like it's really hard to go against an incumbent and get campaign consulting, right? Because all of these campaign consultants are getting money from these incumbents to do town halls, to do fundraising, right? And all of these events, and so none of these campaign consultants want to piss off that incumbent, so nobody will take you unless you're an out-of-state campaigns consultant, which then their help isn't very good either.
Right.
And so, and incumbents just voting for a bill gets them money in their campaign account. They don't even have to try for money. So just their influence in DC alone gets them money. And so, like, you can work your butt off and they'll still outfund you.
Mm-hmm.
And so, since it's so money driven, that's why it's like nearly impossible to succeed. And what I would really love to see is a huge change from the system that we have in elections now. This is my big idea that I think will save America. And it's that, every state, every party takes up what the Utah Republican Party does with our caucus convention system. So everybody has a caucus night. Everybody has conventions, right? We take advantage and use, junior highs, high schools for caucus night, or a high school auditorium for conventions.
Mm-hmm.
All of these taxpayer funded buildings, that can be free or close to free. And then that's how parties decide who their candidates are.
Mm-hmm.
And then do away totally with campaign fundraising. No campaign fundraising whatsoever. And each candidate that progresses from convention to the primary receives an allowance of taxpayer-funded money, from the state or the county or whatever it is, the city, and then that way every candidate has the same amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
And then that way, whatever candidate spends their money the wisest and has the best ideas and can portray that, hopefully they get rewarded for that.
Mm-hmm.
And then you win the primary, and then you get another allowance for the general election and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then that way you heavily prohibit any sort of excursions, bribery, anything towards politicians. And then that way politicians are totally absent of that fundraising aspect. It's not about how much money can I get for my campaign, and in return I'll give you a government contract, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's hopefully would do away with that system. And then you have single day voting, no mail-in ballots,
the
anything
easy
like
ones,
that.
the ones that almost everyone agrees on.
Yeah. It's changing the system that's going to be the hard part. But I think with so that's my big idea as far as elections go. But why I say we're screwed is because like our interest is 27% of our budget now, I think. Wait, is that right? No, that's not right.
An obscene amount of our budget.
Discretionary spending is 27-28% of our budget. That's what it is. And the interest is over $1 trillion, so more than our military spending. And so that's the thing, like we're gonna get to a point where we can't even afford like our interest payment. We're gonna be like, how long until we're gonna cut
our interest
Medicare?
Is gonna be higher than our tax revenue.
Yeah.
Eventually.
Well, yeah. And so, yeah. So when is the point where we have to cut Medicare altogether because we can't afford it because of our interest payment? Mm-hmm. When are we going to, cut our military budget in half because of our interest payment, and everybody in Washington, D.C. is all part of, like 80 to 90% of them are all part of the establishment, where they get these campaign contributions and in return are putting forth government contracts for them because of the committees that they sit on, mm-hmm. As a return for their investment. And so, and it's draining all the United States and our financial system, right? And so, like Doge exposed a lot of stuff. Pottery classes in Morocco for $7 million. Why do we need to do that?
Transgender clinics in like Peru
and Pakistan.
Pakistan. Yep.
And millions of dollars going out for like the dumbest reasons. And it's like, would you borrow $7 million for pottery classes like in Morocco? No, we don't need to be borrowing money from China or Russia or Germany or whoever we borrow money from, the IMF, like for pottery classes. Like that's totally not a wise use of funds. And so, but I think our financial, like our credit will just go to crap, and and people aren't smart enough. But that's the thing. There's so many uninformed voters that just keep voting for these incumbents because they're like, oh well, he was a good choice. He had to have been a good choice for some reason. I'll just keep voting for him.
He's there for a reason.
Yeah, he's
I
there
get
for a
mailers. I
reason.
get mailers from him. He must be.
Yeah.
Some other people must support him.
Yeah, and so that's the thing. There's too many flaws in the system, and the people that need to change them won't change them because they benefit from it.
Right. Right. Well, you kind of answered like half of this, but I'll give you another shot to see if you got any other things you're thinking of. What's your biggest issues, or what are the biggest issues you see facing Utah and America in 2026?
Yeah, that. So and that was the thing. I was like, this isn't just 2026, but this is 2026 and beyond. But yeah, as far as Utah goes, water and water rights is going to be a huge one in Utah. What I see with that is, and I was really disappointed that I didn't get this question in the debate. But all of these politicians have these stupid answers, I think, in my opinion. And Utah's a desert, and that's our climate. We are very limited on water resources, and so it doesn't make sense to keep building like all of these houses and grow as fast as we can in Utah. And that's what we're doing. And it doesn't help that Utahns keep electing all of these home builders, these housing developers, into the legislature, because they're never going to legislate any restrictions on housing.
I've highlighted that before. Like 40% of the legislature either works directly in development, or they make money, like auxiliary money from development.
Yeah, or they fund these politicians' campaigns.
Yep.
And so these politicians can't go against their donors, and so Utah will always grow and grow and grow. And so it'll get to the point where it's like Vegas or California, where they're going to restrict what time of day you can use your water. If like you can't wash your car in your driveway anymore because that's not a wise use of water. And there are going to be really hard fines that are coming. And so, but they just don't get that, unless you bring water in from outside of Utah, then we can't just keep growing like we are.
It's not just residential growth either. It's data centers, the AI data centers that we're building
data
out
centers
in like central Utah.
Yeah, I worked on a data center on the Utah data center for the government. Yeah, actually worked on it, and
those things guzzle.
Yeah, millions of gallons of water.
Yeah,
and and Facebook has one now, and Oracle has one. There's tons of data centers here, and for some stupid reason we keep giving them more water.
Yeah,
and so that's the thing. Like the only solution I see is if we want to keep growing, we have to bring water in from outside of the state. So we have to pump it here through a pipeline or something. And I would say that's how our culinary water system is handled, because irrigation and all of that, might be easier, on the reservoirs and stuff if we don't have to filter it down or anything like that. But anyway, so it's going to be to the point where only the rich can afford water and not the poor. And so it's going to be expensive. Water's going to really mess up Utah. Other issues in Utah is elections. We're going through that right now. Man, I pray that, some election transparency and some audits can come in. I've been a really big fan of auditing an election. I don't care if I'm winning. I don't care if I'm losing. Like, an election should be able to be audited. Like, if you're saying that you're doing everything by the book and it's a fair and true election, what do you got to hide?
Yeah.
So,
and it restores credibility. Like, I think a lot of at least a lot of Republicans don't have any faith in the process in Utah right now, especially after 2024.
Yeah, and that's the thing. if we find something that went wrong, like, sweet, let's address it. Let's bring it to light. Let's kind of educate the other clerks in the other counties. Hey, we had this issue and we messed up here. This is the process that this is the fix that we had. Make sure that you guys aren't having the same issue. So that way there's no, the system stays intact and it's a valid and fair system. And so, but yeah, it's way too hard to audit elections around the country. So yeah, I think those are the two. Right now, there's many more issues. There's wokeness. There's transgenderism. There's
Woke
everything.
ain't dead. Woke ain't dead. I think a lot of
Yeah.
people were really excited when Trump won in 2024. Like, oh, this is the death of woke. Woke is
Yeah.
not dead.
No.
It might have been punched in the jaw and took a step back, but it's rearing its ugly head back, and it's
I think I think wokeness is on the decline, but it's not dead, but people are seeing what they're really pushing, and it's not good. And 2028 and 2026 are going to be interesting election years because if you look at the Democrats and their playbook right now and what they're saying in the media, it's all Trump.
mm-hmm.
Like the only thing they've ran on is orange man bad.
Mm-hmm.
And so like 2026 they still have Trump, but 2028 for the presidency, what if they have to run on?
Mm-hmm.
Trump's not running anymore. Like, I guess you can still say, oh, well, the Trump administration did this or did that.
They have to undo Trump or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, we have to undo Trump. Yeah. So, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. But yeah, politics is a mess. And that's why people are uninformed, is because politics are so frustrating. Like,
For a reason, like it's confusing and for a reason. Like I think that's my tinfoil hat. Like I think that they like to make it confusing and they like to drag it out and they like to throw chaos in there to dissuade people from being informed.
Yeah. Yeah, like my mom physically has to take an anti-anxiety med if she pays attention to politics too much.
Yeah.
And so I get it, but that's the thing. Like if you don't have the stomach for it or the mental fortitude, then don't vote. Like, so I think I think only the informed should vote. And I think that's what screwed up our elections is too many uninformed are voting.
Well, I would agree with that. Last question for you, Paul.
Okay.
What's your plans, 2026 and beyond? Do you plan for running for office again? What are you thinking? What plans? Just what you got?
2026 is interesting. I don't have any plans right now to run. Like with the whole congressional map district debate going on and all of those changes. It's funny to see Ben McAdams running out there and
trying to rebrand himself as a progressive sweetheart.
Yeah. Ben McAdams is interesting. I comment on way too much of his stuff. I don't know. I find it weird. I just find it weird that like Mormons are like Democrats, like far left Democrats. Like, how could you be a far left Democrat and be a Mormon? But I have them in my ward too. They're good people. They're just a little misguided. but 2026. I'm not looking for running, especially if the first district goes towards Salt Lake and is how it stays right now. If it goes back to what it was when I ran in 2024, I still wouldn't run unless there was nobody to challenge Blake. So because I think somebody needs to challenge Blake in 2026, and they really need to push on the fact that he, like, all of the corrupt things that he's doing, and he knows he's doing them, because me highlighting them and everything like that, like he knows they're there. And so, but yeah, somebody needs to highlight that, because in 2028 Blake Moore is going to be running for the Senate, and he's going to be running against Mike Lee if Mike Lee runs again. So
that's an interesting prediction. You think if Mike Lee runs, like, even if Mike Lee runs again in 2028, you think Blake will run against him?
Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Do you think Mike Lee will run again?
I hope he does.
Yeah.
I'm a big Mike Lee fan. I agree with him. 95% of the time. I was really against him selling off that land in southern Utah. I really pushed really hard against him on that. I was really hoping he didn't ban me on Twitter for that, because you go against Mike Lee and he kind of doesn't like dissent very much, and so, but yeah, and as far as that goes, a little plug about my stance on that was, I don't want them to sell our public lands to a bunch of developers for houses. Like, we need to keep our public lands and get them out of the hands of the federal government and into state hands, but we need to protect those lands so that way we can recreate on them, keep them wild. We don't need to keep developing houses everywhere.
Yeah.
And that's what I was against, is because they could build houses adjacent to other houses, but it's like, once you build houses adjacent to other houses, you can build more houses adjacent to those houses, and then more. It's just a growing ring of houses. And so anyway, that's why I was really against that. I'm like, I just want to keep Utah wild, and let us recreate there. But anyways, about going back to 2026, I won't unless nobody challenges them. So I think somebody needs to be there, and I think I'll push more in the debates about his corruption, and or what I see as corruption. It's my opinion. And then, but yeah, I'm gonna be hopefully starting a new YouTube channel soon. You're doing the same here, but mine's more about random questions and stuff, and so, but yeah, hopefully I stay active in politics. A lot of people reach out to me all the time about doing this or that in politics, and helping here or there, and I'm happy to help. So,
well, Paul, appreciate you taking the time. Appreciate you taking the time in 2024. Voters need more options. So just the fact that you were brave enough to stand up and put yourself out there as a choice for voters in the first district, I appreciate it, and I know a lot of other Utah voters appreciated it too. So appreciate you taking the time. And hopefully we'll hear more from you soon.